Hey guys, hope you guys are having a great weekend. So, without wasting much time, let's get straight into the topic. We're going to touch on liquidity dispersal theory today. And this video will be most probably released on 1st September or 31st August. Liquidity dispersal theory. What is liquidity dispersal theory? It is the amount of liquidity being distributed or injected into three assets in a triad. So, which means it says it's the amount of liquidity that each asset in the triad holds. It's used to know which asset has the most amount of liquidity, which is the stronger pair, and which asset has the least amount of liquidity, which is the weaker pair among the triad. Or to know the liquidity is being distributed equally among the assets or not. So we'll be using the triads to know which asset is stronger and which one is weaker. We'll be using triads because the assets in the triad move upon the information that the another asset provides. Liquidity can also be dispersed across the days of the week, not just among the assets in the triad. This means it's not just the liquidity being dispersed across the assets of the triads, but also the liquidity can be dispersed across the days of the week. So we can identify which day has the most amount of volatility and liquidity being injected into the marketplace with the help of high impact news event in the economic calendar. Triad. What is a triad? A general definition of triad: a triad is a combination of three things that function as a single unit. Here it means it's a group of three closely correlated assets that functions as one unit. As said before, the assets in a triad move upon the information that the another asset provides in the triad. So here's some examples of the triad. The index future triad, let's take that as an example. NQES and YM. NQ moves upon the information that Y moves, and YM moves upon the information that NQ provides, and ES, and they all interchange between each other. So each asset in the triad moves upon the information that the another asset provides in the triad. How do we apply the liquidity dispersal theory? So whenever the Dow is not completely in sync with NQEF, and liquidity is not being dispersed equally among all the three pairs. The liquidity being dispersed equally across all the three pairs is very rare to see. But yeah, it's mostly one asset is stronger and one asset is weaker. So the Dow, let's say the Dow has barely moved. The Dow has barely moved at all compared to other pairs. For example, we have 100% liquidity in the marketplace and it's not dispersed equally, which means ES has 40% liquidity and NQ has 40%, but the Dow only has 20% liquidity, which means that liquidity is not dispersed equally among all the three pairs. And which tells us that NQ and ES are likely to expand more and likely more stronger compared to the YM. On the Dow, how do we now know which pair has more liquidity and expand more? So, which asset the farm's failure swing has more liquidity and expands more compared to the asset that doesn't farm a failure swing, which in a sense, the asset that farms a failure swing is more likely to move a lot compared to the asset which farms turn soup or liquidity sweep. So let's say the narrative is bullish The asset that farms bullish PSP is likely to expand more than the asset that farms a bearish PSP, which means the asset that farms bullish PSP has more liquidity compared to the asset that farms a bearish PSP, and vice versa for a bearish narrative. Here, PSP means precision swing point. Do you only use the pillar swings and PSP to use liquidity dispersal theory? No. We can also use economic calendar, sequential S&Ds, terminus price divergence, irregular PSPs, and other cracking correlations to apply liquidity dispersal theory. So why do we need liquidity dispersal theory? Allows you to trade the most expanding asset rather than getting stuck in chop or stopped out by trading the weaker or less liquid asset, which means we are more likely to trade the asset which expands than getting stopped out and chopped. This allows us to trade all the assets in the trade, which means it provides the freedom and the opportunity to know about all assets, and it gives an opportunity for us to understand the characteristics of the assets in the triad. By incorporating the economic calendar, we can identify days with the highest volatility and liquidity and anticipate the likely high, weekly high or low to be formed. So what does this mean? Which means we can use the economic calendar to anticipate the high or low of the week. And it completely this is also a part of liquidity dispersal theory, as I mentioned in the first slide. So provide you guys with an example for this one. Thoughts. Let's say Thursday and Wednesday are the only trading days we have high impact news events, and Monday, Friday, and Tuesday doesn't have any news events. This tells us the most amount of liquidity will be injected into the marketplace on Wednesday and Thursday. So the weekly high or low are likely to be formed on Wednesday and Thursday. Let's say we have 100% liquidity, and now more than 70% of the liquidity may be injected in both of these days, which will allow price to expand more. So let's dive into the chart to see some examples. Here we are back on the charts, and this is NQ and YM on Thursday, 21st August 2025, which means we're going to look into Friday, which is the NFP day. So here we can see we had this sequence recipe between Wednesday and Thursday being formed. NQ. But the NQ was much more weaker without sufficient liquidity had to perform as, which means it formed another weekly cycle sequence recipe, and here YM formed a failure swing, and later that day it started to expand higher. And we can see that YM on this 5 a.m. candle formed a bullish precision candle, and NQ formed a bearish precision, which tells that the NQ is much more weaker and likely to expand less because of this sovereign, and because of the reason it doesn't have enough liquidity to expand. And following before, followed by a position candle before it's already open. And just before the 9:30 opens, you can see the price form another position candle. And NQ made a bearish closure and YM made a bullish closure, which allowed YM to expand more higher compared to NQ, which tells us YM has more liquidity, push higher, and it's the stronger pair right now. And sorry guys, this is not the end of the day. This is the FOMC minutes meeting on the 10 a.m. So coming right now to the current price action. Here you can see that YM formed a bullish position swing point and NQ formed a bearish or hard position swing point. Drop chart over our time frame. We can see the price there during the day made this SFT fill over here, dropping lower. And we also had this Winchester on the highs. Before price dropped lower. And now this 4-hour position swing point, which is bearish on NQ, tells that the NQ is likely to expand more towards the drawn liquidity compared to YM because of these cracking conditions in play. You can see that here NQ from the bearish, which is telling us NQ is likely the weaker side, which is likely to fall more, and YM is currently the stronger side, which is likely to fall less. And looking at the SFT field, this also indicates us that the YM is much likely stronger because the YM is the asset that made the sharp run on the highs. Even on these sides. YM is the asset that made the sharp run on these highs, while NQ made a failure swing and also formed a sequentiality with this SMT fill or SMT fill market. And this tells us that NQ is likely the stronger pair. I mean, NQ is likely the weaker pair, and it's more likely to fall more than YF. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be soon posting more content. And if you guys like this video, make sure to share this to your friends, and also make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. See you guys. Hope you guys have a great weekend. See you soon.